so enjoyed reading Little Rabbit's First Time book yesterday that today I have another book that's got a clock on it, and this one's called Telling the Time, but it's down on the farm. So we'll see about these two children who are down on the farm. Now, this story was written by Heather Amory, and the pictures were drawn by Stephen Cartwright. And usually when he draws the pictures in these Usborne books, he has a little duck hidden on every single page. There's a little duck. So it's really fun to look for. When my children were little, we would enjoy looking for the little duck hidden on every page. Okay, so here we go, telling the time. This is Mrs. Boot with her two children, Poppy and Sam, and their dog, Rusty. They live at Apple Tree Farm. Poppy is learning to tell the time. Sam is learning too, and you can play with this clock to help you learn to tell the time too, so I'll help you with it. It's morning. Mrs. Boot goes into Poppy and Sam's bedroom to wake them up. Rusty goes in with her. He likes to play with Sam. Rusty woke me up. What's the time? It's 7 o'clock. The big hand's pointing straight up, which means it's something o'clock, and the little hand is pointing to the 7, which means it's 7 o'clock. It's time to get up, says Mrs. Boot. It's a sunny morning and we've lots of things to do today. Oh, there's the duck, hiding behind the bed. Poppy and Sam dress and go down to the kitchen for breakfast. Poppy looks at the clock. What time is it now? It's 8 o'clock. So the big hand's pointing straight up, which means it's something o'clock, and the little hand is pointing to the 8, which means it's 8 o'clock. Can we feed the hens after breakfast? Asked Sam. Can you see the duck? There he is peeping out by the table. I'll give the hens their food and you can collect the eggs, Poppy says. Poppy says, Mrs. Boot. Hello, have you laid an egg? He says. What's the time now? It's 9 o'clock. So the big hand's pointing straight up, which means it's something o'clock, and the little hand is pointing to the 9, which means it's 9 o'clock. Can we go and see Daisy's new calf? Asked Sam. And look under there. Can you see the little ducks peeping out? Yeah? So off they go to the cows now. Let's fill up Daisy's water trough and then we'll take the eggs back to the house. I expect you both like a drink, said Mrs. Boot. Yes, please, says Poppy. Then we'll feed the pigs, says Mrs. Boot. What does the clock say? It says 10 o'clock. The big hand's pointing straight up, so it's something o'clock. The little hand's pointing to the 10, so it's 10 o'clock. And he's saying, Daisy's calf looks just like Daisy. Now where is the little duck? Oh, there it is, peeking out behind the barn. I nearly couldn't find it. They all go to the pigsty. What's the time, Poppy? Asked Mrs. Boot. I don't know, says Poppy. Can you guess? The big hand and the little hand are both on 12, says Mrs. Boot. So the big hand's pointing straight up, which means it's something o'clock. The little hand is pointing to the 12, which means it's 12 o'clock. That's right. Can we have a picnic today? Asked Sam. Oh, can you see the little duck? He's at the stable door. So there they are having a picnic. Mrs. Boot, Poppy and Sam carry their picnic out to the big field. "We must feed the new lambs soon," said Mrs. Boot. "And Pippin," says Poppy. "Can we help Ted get the cows in for milking?" asked Sam. "Oh, I can see the church clock," says Poppy. "What time does it say?" Well, the big hand is pointing straight up, which means it's something o'clock, and the little hand is pointing to the 1, which means it's 1 o'clock. And there's the little duck. I think he's down by that picnic. He's probably sharing a bit in that picnic. Well, here they are now with the lambs. "What a very thirsty lamb," says Sam. Now they go to see the horses. "Hello, Pippin," says Poppy. "Here's some hay for you." Now, what time is it while they're feeding the lambs? The big hand is pointing straight up, so it's something o'clock. The little hand is on the 2, which makes it 2 o'clock. And now when they're feeding the horse, the big hand is pointing straight up, which means it's something o'clock. The little hand is on the 3, which makes it 3 o'clock. Mrs. Boot, Sam and Poppy lead the cows to the shed. "Oh, it's milking time." What time is milking time? The big hand's pointing straight up, which means it's something o'clock. The little hand is pointing to the 4, which means it's 4 o'clock. It's 4 o'clock milking time. "Can we go to the train station to meet Dad?" says Sam. "We mustn't be late," says Mrs. Boot. Here we are. Oh, in all those pictures, all those different things they did, I just spotted the duckling peeping out behind the Rusty the dog. That's it. At the station, Mrs. Boot, Poppy, Sam and Rusty wait on the platform. They are just in time to see the train coming in. "Sit down, Rusty, and stop barking," says Mrs. Boot. "He's seen Dad," says Sam. "Yes, we can all go home for supper now." Now, what time is the train coming in? The big hand is pointing straight up, which means it's something o'clock. The little hand's pointing to the 5, which means it's 5 o'clock. Here's the train, and look, there's Dad. 5 o'clock, right on time. And there is the duckling peeping out. "Time for supper." And Dad says, "Look, Poppy, it says it is 6 o'clock. The big hand's pointing straight up, so it's something o'clock. The little hand's pointing to the 6, which makes it 6 o'clock. "I knew it was 6 o'clock, says Poppy, because the little hand is on the 6 and the big hand is on the 12. "Very good, Poppy," says Mrs. Boot. "I knew that too," said Sam. Oh, and look where the duck is, on the stairs. Love watching out for the duck. And now they're off to bed. Let's look at what time the clock says. The big hand is pointing straight up, which is something o'clock. And the little hand is pointing to the 7, which means it's 7 o'clock bedtime. "Oh, I'm too sleepy to tell the time now, but I'll get it right tomorrow," says Poppy. "So will I," says Sam. And look, can you see the dog? He's already asleep. And look, zzz. Let's see. Oh, and there's a little duck. He's peeping out from the side of the bed there. That was quite a long book today, but it was a fun book. I think you'll be expert on telling the time by today. Now, the sentence I'd like you today is to do with this page, and it's Sam and Poppy fed the lamb at 2 o'clock. So I'm going to change my clock here to 2 o'clock. Big hand pointing straight up, so it's something o'clock. little hand is pointing to the 2, so it's 2 o'clock. Right, you've got your gaps on here, so your grown-up can give you a choice of 2 with your words and your sounds, and also you've got the number 2. Perhaps your grown-up can offer you a 2 and a 7, and you can pick which one it is. Right, well, you have a lovely day.